Hey, welcome back again. It's day number 4 with Python coding. We're doing life on land sustainability. We're doing a project called butterfly population growth. So butterflies are endangered. I don't know if you knew that, especially the monarch butterfly. And so we're going to make a project that kind of is, a little bit related to that, maybe a stretch. And it's a little bit of math too, so you can kind of see how it works here. So I'm this butterfly, and I've got to try to increase my butterfly population. And so I'm doing it with math, and so I'm trying to pick the best option available out of the two. Now, sometimes they're not good options, and so here I definitely want the multiple of 2. In general, good ones are green and bad ones are red. And your goal is to see how many butterflies you can get. Wow, that was actually a really good one. 1,792. I bet I never beat that as we played today. So the idea is that you're trying to collect these butterflies. And if you can, you always get the good ones. But sometimes you have to do the bad ones. And notice how my number of butterflies here is changing. So there it's 10, 20. So now it'll go down to 12. Now it's going to go down to 4. And another way you can finish the game is if you lose all your butterflies. So if you hit 0 or negative butterflies, then you lose the game. So that's how you kind of win. That's how you kind of lose. It's got a little bit of math in it, which is fun. And it's thematically centered around butterfly population growth. So that's what we're making today. As we always do, our goal is to learn some things about Python. We're going to do a little bit with variables, motions, timers, if-else, and all kinds of things. And what we're going to be doing is we're going to be porting a Scratch game into Python. The goal being to kind of see how Python works a little bit and to kind of leverage some skills that you've got from Scratch. So here's the game in Scratch. And so you can go and you can remix it if you want, or you can just see inside. You can play it over here, and you can see that it's basically the same game. I think my butterfly is a little smaller. But again, you've got 30 seconds to try to get as many butterflies as you can. And so here it's got a timer. The timer over here is counting up. Ours in Python is counting down, but same. And we can kind of see how this works. So I'm just going to let it run there. It looks like it was set to 20 seconds, and I got 36 butterflies. So we've got a couple of sprites. We've got the butterfly itself. You can see that the butterfly has a left and a right arrow on actions. We've got something that checks to see if you lose, and then something to see if the time is up, right? So that's kind of the structure. The more complicated part in this Scratch project is actually on the balloons itself. You have to know like which costume it is and which math operation to do. And so that's kind of the summary there. The main reason we're in Scratch is that we want to steal these costumes because we don't want to remake all these costumes. For the balloons, for one of the butterflies, and then also the backdrop. Cool, so what I'm going to do first is I'm going to go over to replit.com, or you can use PyCharm, whichever you prefer, and click on Create Replit. We've been doing this a couple times. I'm going to choose to use the Pygame template. And I'm going to call it Butterfly Population Growth. You can use a different name if you'd like. And then the first thing that I do in Replit is it kind of brings in a little Pygame template. Again, love Pygame. Have to do some Pygame stuff sometime. But that's actually not what I want. What I'd rather have is the Replit Play template. I've done this many times before. And so I'm going to do a Google search for the Replit Play library. It finds this GitHub repository. Hasn't been updated in a while, but hopefully they'll pick it back up someday. And I'm just going to copy in this template that uses Replit Play. And what it does is it does 2 things. It reminds me of a little bit of the syntax, which is good. The other thing is the first time you run it, you can see it's going to import this Replit Play library, and it's going to install all these things. While that's busy doing that, I'm going to start grabbing my images from Scratch. Again, with Scratch, you want to make sure it's a bitmap. So I'm going to click Convert to Bitmap. And then you just have to export it. I'm going to call this one Background. Probably already got a file name that. Yeah, that's fine. I'll just replace that file name background. And then what I personally like to do is I just like to bring them up and just drag them in as I make them, which is kind of cool. You can see that it finished running. And I've got that cat program over here. I'm just going to go ahead and stop on that. And as I've done so many times, I'll just comment these things out. You can use Control / to quickly comment them out. I think I'm starting to get some of that stuff in my brain, but this is kind of the pattern I'm using. So the first line, import play, it stays. The last line, play start game, it stays. And then we're going to start bringing in our different assets. Tell you what, just while we're here, and we've done it a couple times, let's go ahead and bring in the background and just kind of see how relatively easy it is to get the background to show up. Wish I could get this window to stay the same size. I keep having to resize it all the time. And I'm going to go get some more images. So I better get a butterfly next. Convert to bitmap. And then I right click on it and I say export. It wants to come down as butterfly 1A. I'm going to change it to just the word butterfly. Again, if you have the ability to change the name when you download it, that's just fine. But if you don't, you could always just bring it in as 1A, and then you could change it inside here. Also, since I'm using Chrome, I can just drag it from here to there. It makes it pretty easy. But if you're using some other program, you can always upload files using the buttons here. All right, so I need some balloons. So I've got my div2. I guess it's fine to call it div2. Really, I should say like balloon div2, but I'll just leave it as div2. Oops, that was not a. That was a bitmap. All right, so div2 was a bitmap. Okay, got lucked out there. Div8, great. So I'll export that one. This is -8. This one's not a bitmap, so I'm gonna click on convert to bitmap. Export him. -4. This one is already, who knows whether they're bitmaps or not. Add 4. And then last but not least, this one I've got to convert to a bitmap apparently. So I'll export him as mul2. Alright, so it took just a little bit, but not too long. And so I can bring in div2, -8, -4, add 4, and mul2. Super. I just like to get all my images in just so that way I potentially don't have to go back to scratch. I do inevitably always go back to scratch to look at the code, but I should hopefully have the images in. I think the next thing I'd like to do is I'd like to add my butterfly sprite. So I'm going to say play.newImage. As we've done a couple things, the required thing, the thing that like always makes sense to put on these guys is some image. You could say image equals and then type the name, but to be honest, I rarely do. And then the other properties like the X, the Y, the size, those I usually put the name on them just because, I don't know, that's my style, I guess. So I'm going to go ahead and bring in butterfly PNG. I'm going to decide where I want to put him. It could go about anywhere. The two values that I'm planning to use are -200 and +200. So I think I'm going to put him on the left side to start with. So -200. The Y that I chose to use, just to keep the math simple, is also -200. And the size can be whatever you think looks good. Maybe I'll just kind of put in 50% here and just see how that goes. And so you'll notice that the background we don't ever need to reference, but the butterfly we do need to reference. And so it looks like we've got a little reference to the butterfly here. Super. So I think that looks pretty good. And the size, that seems fine. The next thing I want to do is I want to hit the left and right arrow keys to move them back and forth. I can see that there's this annotation. Just to kind of remember how that worked again. This at play repeat forever. The word async, if you remember, you only need the word async if you've got the word await. So if you've got like a timer in there. And usually what I do is I don't add it until I need it. And in fact, usually what I do, I've been noticing this pattern. I usually make 2 different repeat forever loops. One for like anything that needs timing in it, and then the other for things that don't need timing in it. So this is really just kind of like my main loop is really probably the best name for it. So I don't even know what all is going to go in here. This is just kind of my main loop. And then if I do end up making some other loop with like an async, I usually put that somewhere different. All right, so in my main loop, what I want to do is I want to see if they press the arrow keys. Now, we've done this before. I doubt that you remember it, but it's play dot something. Now, whenever you're looking up an API, you can put dot, and you can like see if you can find it. I think it has to do with keys, so you can just kind of start typing. Key is press. That actually seems pretty promising. Returns true if any of the given keys are pressed. Yeah, that's exactly what I want. So if they press left arrow, I think it's just left, or if they're left-handed, they can press the letter A. So people that are left-handed, they like to use WASD. People that are right-handed like to use the arrow keys, and so we'll allow either one. So if that happens, what we want to do is we want to set the butterfly's X to -200. And then if the right key is pressed, so we'll do right, or D for the left-handed people, we'll go to +200. So it's interesting how different motion can be in different games. In this particular game, it just has 2 positions. You've either got left, which is -200, or you've got right, which is +200. Again, with Python, there's just a few more things that can get you. Indentation matters, so the number of spaces there matters, and colons matter, and every little thing matters. So if yours is not working like mine, just pause it until you can make sure that it's working just like mine. Cool. I think I'm pretty happy with that. I think I'm ready to move forwards. I think the next thing that I'd like to do is I'd like to create some bubbles. The way I want to create the bubbles is I kind of like to, I'll write a little pseudocode here. So this is create bubbles. So what pseudocode is just comments. And so what we're going to do in our comments is every some number of seconds, like every, I think I did 0.8 seconds in my solution. So every 0.8 seconds, make 2 bubbles. And I could probably even say make 2 random bubbles. And interestingly enough, that's the only thing that this guy is going to do. And then my main loop will take care of moving them. So what we've done in the past is what we're going to do here. We're going to make a list of bubbles. So this is very similar to like jars that we did last time. So we're going to say, hey, bubbles, you start off as an empty loop. And then just because I already kind of know what I'm going to do in the main loop, I'm going to say like for bubble in bubbles. You remember this trick? And then for each bubble, I'm going to make its Y be lower, right? So for every bubble, I'm going to make it go down. I could run this code right now, but it won't really do anything because there's no bubbles. And so it's an empty list right now. So we need to create some bubbles. So to create bubbles, every 0.8 seconds, I want to make 2 random bubbles. So how do I do that? Well, it's going to go forever. So I'm going to steal these 2 lines again. I use a lot of shortcut keys. I know how to use my keyboard effectively. You should get better at it too, right? So like it takes time, but you can hold down Shift to highlight things. You can copy it with Control-C. You can paste it with Control-V. You can comment out or not with Control/. Just skills you got to learn, right? So you'll get there. So I'm going to call this function create bubbles. And I know that I type faster than you, but you can pause, so it's never a problem. And to be honest, I think at this point, I think I've got what I really wanted from my reference code. So I'm gonna create bubbles. And so what you can do here is you can create a bubble for the left, or you can create a bubble for the right, and you can do it as like helper functions, or you could just get it done. Let's just go ahead and kind of think through what we're going to do. So we're going to make a bubble on the left. So we know that it's going to somehow be a new image, like we know that much. For starters here, let's just hard code somebody. Let's just use div2. And we want him to start on the left. So it's going to be an x of negative 200. And at the top of the screen, so maybe we'll just do like 400. Now we don't really know what his size is yet, but this is something to start, right? And then eventually we're going to say bubbles.append bubble left, and then we'll also add on bubble right. Cool. So if we were to do this right now, this has like this async thing in it because it's expecting to have a time delay. I probably should have added my time delay before I deleted the syntax. I think it's timer, seconds, and let's do 0.8. I think that's what I did in mine earlier. So if I run this now, what should happen is bubbles are a little big. Yeah, those bubbles are too big. Let's go ahead and put a size on those bubbles. So I'm going to put a size on, let's just see what I did in my notes. I think I did 33 maybe. I'll try that, and then if I regret it, I'll fix it later. Yeah, that looks like a more reasonable bubble. Now my bubbles kind of appear to be like right on top of each other, so maybe I do want to actually add a bigger delay between them. It's funny, I thought that I did 0.8 in my notes, but something must be different about my notes, so that's fine. I'll just add a second and a half for now. Cool, there we go. Now there's a little bit of a gap between them. So depending on how fast your computer runs, you can get your gap to look the way you want. All right, so I think I'm happy with that. There's a little bit of like timing is off with them, but that's okay. All right, so there's my left bubble. Now I want to do a very similar thing with my right bubble. So I'm going to say bubble right. And he's going to have a 200. And then I'm going to say bubble right append. So I'm going to create one on the left and then one on the right. And so they've got these two different y values, or sorry, two different x values. Cool. And my game is a little hard to play still because they're kind of right on top of each other. I'll see how that goes, right? So maybe I'll bump it up to 2 seconds for now. All right, the next thing I want to do is I want to randomly pick a costume. And so we've done random stuff before. So at the top we add import random. That's a good thing to do. And so we want to randomly pick a costume number. So I'm going to pick like a left costume. And I'm going to say random.rand. I like this rand int one. It's one of my favorites. There's 5 costumes, and in computer science, 5 options are the options 0, 1, 2, 3, and 4. So if you need to write that on a sheet of paper, but 0 is the first number in computer science. I know it's crazy. 0, 1, 2, 3, and 4 are the 5 options. And so that's going to be my left costume. And then my right costume is going to also be random. And now right here is it's hard coding the costume number. That's no good. And so let's go ahead and make a list of possible costume names. So here's what we're planning to do. We're going to make a list of the possible costume names. So div2 is going to be first. After that is probably going to be -8. And then -4. I'm going to do them in order of worst to best. And so mult2 is usually the best. Depending on how many you have, it's possible for minus 8 to be worse than divide by 2, but I'm just going general case here. So what I want to do is I want the possible costume name bracket left costume. All right, that kind of got to be a little bit of a long line. Maybe I should just check out the word possible. That's a little verbose. Costume names. All right, so my costume names are these options. And if you're really OCD, you can fix the alignment here. You do not have to be that OCD. There we go, it's beautiful. And so it's going to use the left costume for that one. And then down here, it's going to use the right costume. Cool. And so if this works, I should be making balloons that are different costumes. So that one seemed to work. Great. And so I should be able to move back and forth with the arrow keys. By the way, the arrow keys require focus to be on this window, so I usually just kind of move it, and then that way I know that I've got my focus on it, because it can certainly happen where it doesn't have a focus. And my computer's running super good today. I'm just cranking through these things. 2 seconds is still too fast for me. Maybe I'll bump it up to 3 seconds, and then I'll just kind of come back the other way. Great, so things are going good. The next question that I could have is, should I make this into a helper function, or should I just leave it in line? I think I'll just leave it in line. I think it'll be okay. Let's go ahead and put on the bubble. So bubble left, I want to put on his costume number. And so what I want to do is every bubble needs to have a costume number. And the reason they have to know it is because if you look at Scratch here, later they're going to read the costume number, and that's going to tell you how to do the math. Does that make sense? So I want to save on bubble left. I want to save off, I'm going to call it the costume number. And of course, this one is just left costume. And then on the bubble down here, which is called bubble right, I'm going to save the costume number on him as well. Now, whenever I add code like that, it's really hard for students to see what I added. So you might want to take just a minute to look at it. But it's that line there and this line here. So there's 2 of them. Notice how it's called costume number. So I can guarantee that every bubble has a costume number. And then its value is going to be 0, 1, 2, 3, or 4. And this one's also going to be 0, 1, 2, 3, or 4. And I can use that later to figure out how to do the math. Cool. All right. I am happy with the creation of bubbles. I'm happy with bubbles falling. I think what I really want to do is I want to start catching bubbles or making bubbles disappear if I don't catch them. So let's go ahead and focus on those things. So we've already got a loop that goes through all the bubbles. And probably what we want to do next is we want to say, hey, if the bubble is touching the butterfly, then we want it to disappear. And so if you remember the way we make things disappear, we say bubbles.remove the bubble. We've done this a couple times. And then bubble, remove yourself from existence. And so it's kind of those 2 things. Cool. So if you run that, you should hopefully be able to make bubbles disappear when they hit. So whenever I hit that, it's almost like the bubble pops on me, which is fun. Now the other bubble, you'll notice that it just goes cruising on past. That's actually fine. But we'd kind of like to make it pop as well. And really what we'd rather is we'd like to make people catch one or the other, not both. And so you shouldn't be able to catch this one and then also catch this one, right? So see how I can kind of like catch them both? And so really what we'd like to do is when they get to a certain height, if they weren't caught, we want them to disappear. And so we need to figure out what height we're catching them at. Does that make sense? Here's what I'm going to do. I'm going to print out the bubble Y just before I catch it, just to see what that height is. So I'm catching on, I'm reading down here, I'm catching that one at negative 88. Cut this one over here also at negative 88. I cut that one really low, right? And I don't want to do that. So if they get to negative 88, they should get caught. And if they get below that, they should disappear without being caught, right? Let's see if we can do that. So let's say, so I got rid of that print statement because it was just helping me out. And your number might have been different from my number. But we want to actually see not just if it's touching, then we want to get rid of it, but also if the y is less than negative 88, then I want to also get rid of it. And so what we want to do is we want to just print out something here. So we'll print out caught. And then down here, we're going to print out removed. Cool. And so every time we should have one caught and one removed. So whenever this one hits me, I can see that one got caught, one got removed. One got caught, one got removed. Cool. Caught and then removed. And if I'm over here, we should have a caught and removed. Now, you can try to be really fast and try to get a double caught. I don't know if you'll succeed or not. But to be honest, like, somebody's going to have to get really clever to figure up your game. I think that it's pretty hard to catch them both, right? And so we'll just go ahead and we'll call it good enough there. If I change this 88 to like 130, it'd be very easy to catch them both. Great. So I think mine's working fine. I put in little print statements all the time just to like help me out, but then I remove them when I don't need them anymore. The next thing I want to do is I would like to have a counter. And so I'm going to say butterfly counter. I'm going to start it at 10. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to modify the counter and then print out the counter every time I catch one, right? So I'm just going to print out right here counter, or actually I'll just say butterflies. Butterflies is equal to, and my trick that I like to do is I like to use these little F strings. So I'm going to say F right there in front of it. And then I put in curly braces. So you have to hold down Shift and type those curly braces. And then I can say butterfly counter. Cool. And then what I'd like to do is I'd like to see what the bubble costume was. So let's just go ahead and say bubble dot costume number. If it's 0, you check for equality with double equals. That's because single equals does assignments. You've used a whole bunch of single equals. If you go and test for equalities, use double equals. If that happens, tell you what, we'll just be very verbose about these. The butterfly counter is equal to butterfly counter divided by 2. So if it's 0, that divides it by 2. Let's go ahead and stick on a couple more. These are the bad ones. If it's number 1, that is -8. Number 2 is -4. Cool. I'm going to test it just because I would like to see if it's working at all. So here's a -4. So I hit that, and it should say butterfly 6. Here comes another -4. Great. There's 2. This one's going to do nothing for right now, which is fine. Ooh, divide by 2. 1.0. Then that one kind of does nothing. If I come over here, I can get half a butterfly. It's kind of weird to have half a butterfly. And I can go negative butterflies. Stop. So things are going good. I'm happy with it. 2 problems. Fractional butterflies. Not a big fan of fractional butterflies. Negative butterflies, we'll deal with that later because that'll just be a game over condition. Fractional butterflies I'm going to fix by changing this divide, this is a neat trick, to divide. Now divide is an operator in Python too. It means integer division. So I think it's kind of neat. Let's go ahead and add the others. So we've got a costume 3 and a costume 4. And then here it's going to start getting good. So we've got a +4, and then we've got a mult2. And you can go through and you can compare those to the costumes, but it should be all the right things. And so if I do a -8 here, oops, I made this too low. I can't see the output. -6. Oh, -6 is going to go to -12. Things are going bad. So I let myself get into the negatives again. But you can see that it's working. So -4 worked out, -8 worked out, +4. Since I'm in negative land, -10 is going to go to -20. Obviously, I don't want to be in negative land, right? So mine's working as expected. Every time I catch a balloon, this should go to 18. This should go up to -22. Cool, it's working great. One thing that I like to fix is I'm printing out in the console log here. That's not really the goal with coding. You want to put it on the screen. So let's go ahead and put it on the screen. So let's have a text box that says message, just because that's the title I usually use. And it's going to be a new text. And it's going to say butterfly, like how many there are. So here it says butterflies equals. And I'm going to start it off just saying equals 10. If I wanted to be really good, I could be like %f of butterfly counter. The only value in doing that, and I'm not going to always go to that much trouble, is that way if I change this number to like 20, if I want them to start with 20, it'll just kind of work. Good deal. Butterflies 10. That looks good. I think in my solution, I put it down at the bottom, and I made it kind of purple. Whatever you want to do is fine, right? I kind of like that purple color. So I think I will go ahead and do that. And I think it would be better at the top, actually. So I think I'm going to say y equals, what is it, 280 is pretty close to the top. And I like that color purple. That was awesome. Color equals purple. Sorry, my cursor's in the way on you there. The size, we'll just see if the size is okay. The size might actually be fine. And what I want to do, instead of printing it here, so here's what I'm going to do. I'm just going to get rid of the print in the parenthesis. And so now I'm left with just this part. And so what I want to do is I want to say message.words equals that. And so now it'll actually just show up on the screen. So butterflies 10 is up there now. And then now I'm down to 6, which is no good. No. And then here I'll be down to 1. And you can see I did not go fractional. Then now I'm at 0. All right. So excellent. Let's get back positive again here. That'd be great. For only a short period of time. Then I'm going to multiply by 0 again. Terrible. Hopefully you're better at catching butterflies than me. Great. So the game is good. It's working. The only thing that is not working is any end conditions, right? So it's nice to make the game end. So there's two ways that it can end. One is if you're forced to go 0 or negative. So here I'm going to go to 0. So that should end the game. So let's go ahead and add some game over logic because it'll be good for us. The style that I've found successful in the past is to make a variable called butterfly.isGameOver. So I just pick some central sprite and I just put the isGameOver on him. And then the nice thing about that is that in each of these loops, you can say like if butterfly is game over, then you can just return, right? You could also say something if you wanted. So maybe you could put like final butterflies in here, right? So this would be like my final butterflies. Again, I know I did that very quickly, but you can see the important things. You make the variable with the initial value. You read the variable, and then here I added the word finals. Now the other thing that we should do is we should somewhere set the variable, right? And so how can the game be over? Well, there's a couple ways. I think I'll just kind of go down to the bottom of my for loop here. I got to be careful to indent 2 spaces. So if the counter is low, so one way to lose is for the butterfly.counter to be less than or equal to 0. And if that happens, then is game over is set to true. Cool. And so with this, it will end the game if they lose all their butterflies. And it'll say finer butterflies, and it'll probably be like 0 or negative something. The other thing you should do is you should look for other loops. So here's another loop, and this one should also end. I think what I'll do on this other one is I'll just copy this chunk. But I don't want it to keep, and then I don't need the print statement. I don't want it to keep making bubbles, right? So I'm just going to say if butterfly is game over, return. So it'll just stop. So now what will happen is if I get to 0, it will stop the game. I'm going to intentionally play badly. So I'm at 14, sure enough. I'm down to 7. I'm down to 11. And then, check this out. I'm going to get just -8, and it should stop it. Boom. Final butterflies. I can see why I put it at the bottom. I put it at the bottom because it doesn't overlap with the text. So it worked. It stopped. It says 0 there, right? Actually, maybe if they lose based on running out of butterflies, maybe instead of saying negative, we'll just say 0. Now, they could lose by running out of time, so I'll tell you what I'm going to do. I'm going to say if the butterfly counter is less than or equal to 0, we'll just print out a message that says you lose, right? You lost all of your butterflies. Frowny face. And then else, I'll print out the final number of butterflies. I think that'll look better than being at like -6 butterflies, right? So just say you lost all your butterflies. Then the other thing I'm going to do is I'm going to put this at the bottom of the screen. So I'm going to change Y to be -280. Great. So my butterflies is at 10, and I'm going to try to intentionally play badly. So I'm at 6. All right, back to 10. All right, here we go. -4 is going to stop it. Boom. You lost all your butterflies. Frowny face. Cool. The other thing that I would like to do is I would like to have a timer for stopping me if I'm doing good, right? So if I'm doing good, like I could play forever, right? So I mean that's one option. But I think a fun thing to do would be to have a timer that'll actually stop you at a certain time. That way, like, I don't know, there's a goal, right? So like you play for 20 seconds, and then if you're still alive after 20 seconds, you just get how many butterflies you've got. So cool. So things are going good. We're going to have to learn some new skills about timers. We've used timers before. The first thing we need to know is that you need to import the time library. And the thing that we did before is we recorded like the start time. So let's go ahead and do that again. It turns out that the start time doesn't have to be on a variable, but I kind of like to do it. So I'm just going to say butterfly.startTime. And if you remember how this trick works, you just say time.time. It would also be nice to have like a maximum time, like how long is your game going to be played for. I'm eventually going to set this number higher, but I'll start it off as like 10 seconds. So this is the max time. The way I name variables is I put an underscore S on here because it's seconds, right? So max time in seconds. Great. And so this is going to record the start time. As a reminder, time.time, it gives you the number of seconds that have passed since the apocalypse. The computer science apocalypse was January 1st, 1970 at exactly midnight. Don't ask me why. And so that is the number of seconds that has passed since the apocalypse, and epoch for short. And then we want to stop after 10 seconds. So really what we want to do is we've got another way that the game could be over down here. So if the butterfly counter is that, the game is over. The other way that the game could be over, and I'm going to do something tricky here, I'm going to add the word or. Or is a Python word that means or, right? So if this happens, or the current time, so time.time minus the start time, so I put it on butterfly.start time, I believe, is greater than the max time. And by the way, this when does it have to be on a variable and when does it not have to be? It depends on if it changes or not. This one doesn't change. Turns out start time doesn't change either, so it doesn't have to be on the butterfly, but there's no real harm in it. So let's just see if how this works. And so I should play for 10 seconds, and so you're just going to have to kind of keep track of what 10 seconds is. But right now I've got 6 butterflies, 12. Cool, and then it stopped at this many seconds. Super. Could certainly be done. There's nothing wrong with that at all. I found when I was playing the game that it's fun to see the timer. This is up to you, but I think it's fun to see the timer. And so I actually in mine I added another label called the timer. So let's say timer. Play.new text, and we'll just say, I don't know, time equals, and we'll just start it off with, I like these F strings, I'll use the F strings again. We'll start it off with the max time, and we'll make it a countdown. I think that'd be cool. And what I want to do is I want to first get it kind of positioned correctly. It probably should be, I don't know, maybe it could be up in the corner. I don't know, I'm just kind of wondering here. Or maybe it could be like down here, or maybe it could just be above butterflies in the middle. Maybe that's the easiest. So we'll put it above it. Maybe that's going to be about negative 260. It seems like it should be a little smaller. So we'll make the font size like, I don't know, we'll try 16. And then we'll just try that and see where we're at, right? So it should be above it. And 16 is a little small. Maybe 36 would be better. I'm going to come up some since the font is bigger. Maybe we'll go with like 240. Cool. And so there's my time equals 10. Now the timer should be counting down. So let's see if we can fix that. So I'm going to take this little thing here. It stops good, which is neat. I'm going to take this thing here and just somewhere in the loop, it doesn't really matter where, I'm going to say timer.words is equal to that. Now I don't want to print out the max time. I really want to subtract off I'm going to call it time elapsed. So it's going to be hard to do all this because it's the time elapsed. So I made a helper variable, right? So the time elapsed. Well, actually what it is it's actually just this thing down here. So the time.time minus the start time. That is the time elapsed. And so I'm going to take the start time minus the amount of time that's elapsed. And the amount of time that's elapsed is the difference between what time it is now and when we started. All right, cool. Now, by the way, since I'm figuring this as a helper variable here, I could also use it down here. So it's whenever the elapsed time is greater than time s. That actually reads more elegantly anyway, right? Which is kind of nice. Let's see what happens when we run it. It might have a lot of digits. We'll just see. Yeah, so it's working. It's just super annoying, right? In that it's showing so many digits. Cool. So there, apparently I lost all my butterflies before time ran out. That's great. I want to get rid of some of those digits. There's a bunch of ways to do this. The trick we used last time is we said colon point like 2F if you wanted 2 decimals. Oops, I put that in the wrong spot. Let me grab that off of there because that's the wrong spot. Find the timer. Here's the timer. Right there. And so what this does is this colon says, hey, here comes some formatting stuff. And the formatting stuff is that we want to print out 0 decimal points. Looks like I messed something up because it stopped running. Maybe I need to put that whole thing in parentheses. Is that what I've done wrong? Oh no. I've never had this happen before. So apparently everything stopped working. So I'm going to undo, and see if I can get things working again. Has nothing to do with my code. Has everything to do with something else unrelated to me, I guess. All right. Back to where it was before. Back in a very good state. I'm going to now try putting on this colon 0.1F. There's a chance that I wrote the syntax wrong. No, maybe I was impatient. Cool. And so now you can see that it's counting down, which is kind of fun. Great. And so it's just telling me how much time is remaining. When it finishes, it says time -0, which I guess that's fine. I don't have to change that. If I lose all of them, so I'm going to try to deliberately lose them all, you can see like how much time was left when you lost them all. Sure enough, I was unable to lose them all. The point I was making is that you could hide the timer at the end if you wanted. It doesn't matter. So if you wanted to hide them all at the end, here's kind of my end area. I could say timer words equals the empty string. And so that'll just kind of get rid of it at the end, right? Cool. I think that I'm ready to go. I'm going to bump the time up to 30 seconds. And I'm gonna run this guy. I think that might be it. Let's make my window nice and big here. Oh, run. I bet that was the problem I was doing before. I was clicking it once to stop it, but then I wasn't clicking it again to run it. All right, let's see how good I can do. Down to off the go, up to 9. I'm still alive. I still got 1 butterfly. Up to 4, still have 15 seconds. Up to 9, a big multitude. That's going to help me out. So coming up to 18, 36. Come over here. Yeah, 72. Oh, better just do the -4. 72. Awesome. So that's our game. So it's a pretty neat game. It's kind of fun to play. You can see how you do, and sometimes things are just out of your control. But you can look at kind of the finished code here. I'm sure that when I made the solution, I did it just a little bit different, but you can see that the gist of it is the same. I think I'm going to go ahead and get rid of those comments now. And there's quite a bit of code here. I mean, 100 lines of code, so quite a bit of things we did. So the goals that we're trying to get across, I realize that these things are hard for you, that Python is new, but sometimes it's just more fun to build real things and then just kind of follow along, and then you can start to see how to make changes to these games as the first step, and then eventually making your own games, right? And again, we're kind of going down this path of how do we take something that we could do in Scratch and then port it over to how we do it in Python. All right, so that's our camp for this year. That was 1, 2, 3, and 4. Python is done. I've enjoyed getting to do these projects with you. We'll do it again next year. So thanks for joining us. Bye.